Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of Get to the Plot Film Club, the official podcast. I'm honestly so happy. I'm so glad. I need to do the spiel first. Thank you all so much for all your lovely comments and the engagement and just how passionate people have been about this. Honestly, I had a chat with my friend the other day and I was saying about how I wanted to start this film club. I've been wanting to start it for quite a while, to be fair, but recently I was like, no, I'm just gonna do it because there's no time like the present. And I said to her, I was like, I just hope I get like at least like 10 people that join this club, so I'm not talking to no one. And now I think we're on 570 subscribers, which like is incredible. The amount of people that have joined Substack just to be part of this club, I thought that was the bit that surprised me the most. But obviously, there's so many of you on TikTok and some people on Instagram as well, which is so good. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining the club. I hope you're having a good time. And obviously, today's episode is all going to be about the Lobster. And yeah, what a film! I'm really glad I did choose this film for the first one because I feel like there's so much to talk about. So I'm gonna be a bit weird right now and just write down when I started. So I know I know how long I've got. Sorry. Right, okay, fab. So I've got all that. But yeah, so there's a lot to discuss. I've really enjoyed reading everyone's reviews, and I have just picked out little bits from people that have written some stuff. People have really written some interesting stuff, and I cannot wait to get into those kind of things. So, about the film. This film was released in 2015, which is just over a decade ago now, and I feel like societal standards of 2015 was such a different time and had different pressures on relationships than we do now, which is crazy considering it was only 10 years ago. But let me talk about the director. So, obviously, this film was directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, and he started off with directing dance videos, TV commercials, music videos, short films, and also theatre plays. And I feel this didn't surprise me actually because I have seen Poor Things and Begonia, and I feel like Poor Things is so much more on the theatrical side. He obviously uses a lot more like what is it, fisheye lens, and obviously they're wider shots. And to me, that's theatre. When you don't have something that you're being purposely like pulled to focus on, um, that feels like theatre. So when I saw this, I was absolutely not surprised, like at all, that he decided to do that and that he'd done theatre, which was really nice actually. It's quite refreshing to see when a film director does theatre because you can tell. So yeah, this film was originally announced in 2013, and it was meant to star Jason Clarke and Elizabeth Olsen, but they both dropped out due to scheduling differences. I will be honest, I don't really know a lot about Jason Clarke. I think the latest thing he did was Oppenheimer. I don't really know what he's like as an actor. I think it said that he went to go film Everest. I think that was the film. So that's why he pulled out of this project. I'm not mad about that. I think Colin Farrell does an exceptional job in this film. I honestly couldn't imagine it being anyone else, to be honest. Oh, I didn't actually just disclaimer. This little guy here, this is my mic. It's one of those kind of tiny little Amazon mics that I got, and it's attached to my Kindle holder. Hopefully the setup will improve. But I just thought I'd say that just in case you were looking like, what the hell is that? And obviously if you're listening to this, you wouldn't have even known unless you were like, cool, the audio on this is a bit rubbish. I will get there when the budget comes in, because the budget does not exist at the minute. um, then hopefully I can get some better equipment to do this a bit more properly. But this is what we're working with at the minute. Anyway, continuing. So what was I saying? So yeah, so Colin Farrell, fantastic. Couldn't think of anyone different. Elizabeth Olsen, I think, is an interesting one. I think she could have done this part really well. She, I think, was filming Age of Ultron at this point, and that's what she opted for, which I'm not mad at all because obviously we would not get Scarlet Witch, and we wouldn't get WandaVision. I love WandaVision so much, so I would have been mad if this had been any different. The only thing I don't think I would have liked about her performance is I just don't think she would have understood the sort of like, you know, the deadpan acting style that they've kind of decided to go with. I think because obviously John C. Reilly's in this film and he does a really good job of looking the part and also acting the part. I just find him so jarringly American in this. And yeah, I just think if and maybe if there was another American person in it, it would have been fine. But I think the fact you've got British accents, Irish and French, they're okay. But the fact that John C. Reilly is American in this movie really annoys me. But it's nothing against him. I think he does really work in the film. But that's my opinion about, I guess, the original casting. But I think they did a better job for going with different people. So the consensus of the film at the time, and I think these are the perfect two words to sum up this film, was thrillingly ambitious. It's ambitious for sure. There's not really a film out there like this, but also it is thrilling. It's tense, and it does keep you engaged. Yeah, we'll get onto that in a moment. So this film was actually also nominated for an Oscar and a BAFTA. It won Best Screenplay at Venice Film Festival and was nominated for a number of categories at British Independent Film Awards, but only Olivia Colman won for Supporting Actress. And I think that's so impressive considering she really was not in the film that much at all, or at least thinking about it, I don't think she was in it that much. So the fact that she won for this, like, I think again that just proves how much of an impeccable actor she is, because you can't be in a, well, I mean, Judi Dench proved it that you can be in a film for like 2 minutes and still win the award, but I think it just proves how impressive she is as an actress. It won the jury prize at Cannes, but it also won the Palm Dog Award, which went to Bob the dog. And when I read this, I was honestly so happy because Bob the dog deserved his flowers. He was so good. I mean, I did find out that it was a prop dog that was on the floor. Spoiler alert when it dies. But Bob the dog, what an icon. Anyways, yeah, back to the film. So I read a really interesting interview with Lanthimos. I'm going to go tag it in the Substack, I think. So the idea, he says, came from a discussion with his screenwriter, and I'm going to try and pronounce his name. Efthimis Philippou. I think that's how you say it. Apologies if I got it wrong. But they basically talked about how it becomes necessary for people to always be in a relationship and the negative stereotype that we have about those who are single. We as a society seem to downgrade those who are not in relationships with someone. We also talked about the complicated process that people go through in order to be with someone, and we became interested in the trauma and fear that are involved in this process. I think that there is that negative outlook when, back in the day anyway, I say back in the day, literally 10 years ago, I think there was definitely more pressure, societal pressure. But I think now, I think it's really interesting because I feel like now, like recently there was that article that Vogue came out with saying, is having a boyfriend embarrassing? And I think it's so crazy how much it has switched, like in the space of barely any time. And yet it's so different now. But the fact that that was so prevalent at the time, I'm glad that they picked up on that and then they kind of threw it in this really interesting dystopian world. He talked a little bit about the filming process, and he says that during production they used almost entirely natural light and no makeup on any of the actors, which I feel like you can really tell. It is incredibly bleak looking. The shots are still very impressively picturesque, I guess you could say. Maybe not picturesque, but satisfying to look at. So I think that is really impressive that they did only stick with natural light, but they said they only used a bit of light when it came to filming at night. And also, the really interesting thing about this is this was actually the first time that Lanthimos uses music in his films. He'd done 2 films prior to this one that were on a lower budget, and he'd never used music. And it's said because I think he wasn't sure about how to make it flow, or that you didn't want to kind of influence people's emotions. But with this, he said, for example, there are sometimes moments where the music is very dramatic and is juxtaposed with a very funny or awkward scene, or vice versa. Creating all of these different layers and combining them ultimately produces a different tone for the film. actually, what we've done is use music not to describe what's happening in the scene, but to create a different tone for the entire scene. He did this in Begonia, and the similar way of where he kind of puts little spurts of music at points, and I love it. I think it's just so clever because, like he says, he put it on awkward scenes or where it is kind of funny, and then it'll just be like dun dun dun. Like it's just it really does add like comic effect to it. And I do sometimes think actually, when I was watching it anyway, watching it on your own sometimes makes you feel like you're not meant to laugh. When I went and saw Begonia in the cinema, people were laughing, so it kind of made you feel at ease to laugh. But when I was watching this on my own, I was a bit like, is this meant to be funny? Because I was like, it is it's funny, but is it meant to be serious? But I did find it really funny, and I think he does it a lot at the start of the film, and I did kind of feel like it dropped off a little bit towards the end. I was a bit disappointed because I liked those elements. I feel like his style was more prominent at the beginning of the film than it was towards the end. Reading a few of your reviews, and a lot of you said that the first part definitely had your engagement a lot more than the second section. But then actually, there were some people that said they preferred the second part more than the first. That can definitely be the case. I guess it just is whatever is appealing to you. Obviously, the first act is a lot more structured, and the second act obviously is to depict, the rebellion and to be a bit more grounded, I guess. He did also say in the interview, and this is going to relate back to what I said about John C. Reilly being American. He said, I just didn't see any reason to make their accents consistent and try and pass them off as being from the same place. That also represents the world of the Lobster, which defines a society where everybody is natural to whom they are as people. I don't know how I feel about this. I get that from a UK perspective, there's so many accents in the UK. So when you are hearing different accents, it doesn't come as a surprise. But American accents just come out of nowhere. Like, don't get me wrong, when I watch an American program, I know they're American. But thing is, even if you put a British person within a group of Americans, the British person stands out like crazy. And I feel like I don't know how no one kind of thought, hang on, this is weird that there is just this random American guy. It's difficult because this film is obviously so much about, there's not a lot of self expression in this film, which is the point. It's meant to be obviously a dystopian world where everyone's very bleak. But then it's like, oh, is the accents purely there just so people are distinguishable? But then that's when you get onto the whole characteristics thing, that you're meant to find a person to be in a relationship that has the same characteristic or a similar defining characteristic as you. Because in the credits or on IMDb, all the characters, apart from David, they're all like a woman or a man, and then their defining characteristics. So John C. Reilly in the film was a man with a lisp. We've got Rachel Weisz, a short-sighted woman. This was the thing that did really bug me, was the whole characteristics thing, because I didn't get that barely anyone had anything similar. I don't know, maybe I've read this wrong, or I didn't pick up on something in the film, but for me anyway, I'd say if I was in the film, something that people pick up on about me a lot is I've got very blue eyes. You're telling me that no one in that blooming hotel had blue eyes, so that they could just go, look, we both have blue eyes. Is that enough? I think it's because in the hotel, when they were talking to the man with the limp, they were like, no woman here has a limp, so you're out, basically. But did they have, I don't know, oh my god, did they have to pick one thing about them that they could then match with? But then it didn't make any sense, because then Colin Farrell suddenly becomes heartless to be with the heartless woman. But then, I don't know, honestly, it just, like, there's such a bigger plot hole there, but no one's picked up on that. I don't know if I'm kind of losing the plot here, but I just was really confused. I just thought, like, you can't be telling me that you're only allowed one characteristic to match with people. Or you couldn't even just find something in common. Like, it, to be fair, even that scene where, you know, the short-sighted woman goes blind and then David is trying to find similar characteristics with her so that they can run away together. But he's like, do you know German? But then he said he didn't know German. Could the characteristic be that we both don't know German? Because I don't know. Maybe I'm getting caught up on it, but yeah. Anyway, the only other thing that did also bug me about this film, and I feel again it was just a bit too not enough lore there, was the fact that the whole like animal concept with it all. Why is everyone picking dogs? Why is everyone picking horses or donkeys or things like that? I get it's meant to be that you choose an animal that is similar to you, but I'm gonna be real here. I'd be a lion. I'd be a dolphin. I'd be just something fun. I don't know why people wouldn't want to be something fun. Oh no, I've just answered my own question because they're all bored. But I think even you'd want to be an animal that is of just a cool caliber. I can't remember what the man with a limp says that he wants to be, but obviously I know the man with the lisp, he's like, I want to be a parrot. Which again, to be fair, parrots are cool. It still just didn't make a lot of sense. Obviously, please leave a comment if I've missed out on this. And also, the thing that I would like you to all to reply to is if you had to turn into an animal, what would that animal be? Because I'm really curious to see what other people say. I get people are sick of all this, you know, so that then they pick animals that are just average. But I don't know, I was just surprised no one was like, I want to be a cheetah. Or, you know, I want to be a scorpion. Like, it's different. Anyways, on to the next. So, let's move into the reviews from you guys, the critics. You honestly have all written such interesting stuff. I have really loved reading through all of this. I will say though, before I get into the reviews, there was one thing that I don't think I ever saw in anyone's review, and that was anything about the opening scene where the woman's driving the car, she stops the car, gets out and shoots the donkey. Or the horse. I think it's the donkey. No, is it cow? Oh my god. Now I'm questioning everything here. I think it was a donkey, but apologies if I'm wrong. But yeah, she goes out and shoots the donkey. First of all, I think it's a great setup, but then I think it is kind of forgotten about by the time you get to the end of the film. I think the ending of the film then takes up your brain, in a sense, like it takes up all the questions, and then you don't suddenly think, hang on, why did that woman get out of the car and shoot the donkey? Now, obviously, I guess they were trying to imply that the donkey is someone that got turned into a donkey. However, my money is on the fact that I feel like it was like her ex-husband or wife that was the donkey. And perhaps that partner left her for somebody else, that it didn't work, so that they got turned into a donkey. Or they just left her and said, not gonna lie, I'd rather just be an animal than be with you. And that's crazy. That would hurt me bad if someone's just like, no offense, I'd much rather live my life as a donkey than live with you. And then I'd be like, okay, you're getting murdered. um, but I think what's really interesting actually about all of this is how the women are the ones that really follow the rules. Whereas it's always the men that are just like, how do I escape this fate? How do I lie my way out of this? Whereas the women, they're like, turn me into an animal. If I don't meet the right one, turn me into an animal. And I think if this film was set today, it wouldn't be like that. It would be that only men were turned into animals, I think. It would be like, right, you've got to find a girl that likes you. And if she doesn't like you by the 45 days, you get turned into an animal. I don't think they'd include the women. I'm going to be so for real. And I think that's something to ponder for you all, I think. Anyway, so the reviews, let's talk about it. So Chris gave it 3 stars. And they said, I also saw a comment on TikTok saying that you can hear the sounds of waves during the credits, perhaps suggesting that the second option was what he chose, and that since he ultimately failed to find a match, he became a lobster. Yes, I love this theory because that's definitely like guessed to be the ending. I don't know why. I just saw it as like the shot that could have been up was, say David was just by the sea. He'd left out the bathroom window or he'd gone out the restaurant and just stood by the sea. Because I don't know if they were that close to the sea. I don't know. But that he was probably just like contemplating what to do. And I think him being by the sea would go make you go, right, do I want to commit to this life of blindness, or do I go and live in the sea as a lobster? Talking about this film seriously feels so weird. But I'm gonna be honest, like I really don't think he would have blinded himself. I don't know. But I think also, and again, if I've got the wrong end of the stick here, please let me know. But Rachel Weisz's character was narrating throughout the entire movie, and fun fact, that's actually it's kind of an interesting thing with film is that you're usually meant to introduce all of your main characters at the start of the film, or like at least within the first part of the film, and they don't do that with Rachel Weisz's character. However, they get through that by having her as a narrator, which I think is so clever. Like, it then makes sense when you get to that part of the film. But she then does say about how David said to her, I think about when he turned the Heartless Woman into an animal. She said that it was an animal that was like the worst animal to be, which I think probably be an ant, to be real. I'm sorry. Sorry to all the ants out there that are watching. But yeah, I think she said it like, oh, and every time I ask, he says, don't worry about it. So to me, I'm like, he must have gone with her, but whether or not he blinded himself, because he wouldn't have had to. So I think that's really interesting to think about. But yeah, I really did like the sound of the waves. That again, it just makes you ask more questions. Nat, hello Nat. I love this girl. Nat is one of my closest friends that I made at uni, and since we graduated last year, I just haven't had a chance to see her. So thank you so much. And also, Nat is technically the first ever member of Get to the Plot Film Club, so we love Nat. But Nat gave it 3 stars, and honestly, this is fantastic. This is what she said. I found myself coming back to the same question. Is it better to be forced into a connection to escape loneliness if by doing so you are erased who you really are? Would life after being turned into an animal be more free than the lives that they're living? Is it worth staying a human for longer if the reason you are given more days is because of how predatorily proficient you are in the hunts? And in that case, what makes us so different from the animals anyway? Chef's kiss. This is such a good point because I feel like, again, like the hunting bit gets so overlooked, but it's so important because then you think actually that's where the parallel is between them getting turned into animals, is that actually then people get hunted down for being single, so you might as well, you're still getting turned into the animal even if you leave and escape the process. This is why I really loved reading your reviews, because some of you just like write some really interesting things and you're like, hang on, I did not think about that at all. But Alexander said gave it 4 stars, and this was actually a second time watching for Alexander. I also love how bizarrely the dialogue is delivered, and the screenplay itself is genius to me. I think Rachel Weisz's performance in this is fantastic, very underrated. And there was somebody else who wrote Lily. Lily gave it 4 stars and said, the main character, amazingly played by Colin Farrell, tries his best to abide by societal expectations of finding a partner, but is having a hard time. He decides to cheat the system by giving himself the same characteristics as someone, but is caught and then tries to escape the hotel. And I think he plays this so impeccably well. The one moment that really did get to me, and it was really close to the beginning of the film, was when he talks about his sexual preference and he says straight, oh, but I had a thing with a guy in college, I think he said it was. So do you have the option of being bisexual? And they respond with, no, you've got to pick a lane here. And then he just takes the longest pause before he then says, I'm going to go with women, being interested in women. And oh my God, I just was watching it and I was like, of course he's going to think about this, because there's so many aspects to think about. Who am I more likely to have a connection with? would it be easier to fool a woman or a man into a relationship so I can cheat the system? And I just thought, like, especially with acting, I think a lot of people, like, if they were an actor in that position, would just sort of think, one, two, three, I'm gonna go with women. But you could genuinely see it was like the fight or flight kicked in his head of like, what is the best way that I can do this? Like, what is the strategic move here? And it just really read well on camera. So I just thought, like, he's got this. He knows the character, he knows the world he's living in. But I think Rachel Wise as well. I think welds well with David, and understands the dynamic, because you do feel for these two characters. You do want them to be together. And considering obviously there's not like a crazy obvious emotional connection between the two, you're still rooting for them. If you are rooting for people that you feel like you shouldn't be rooting for, you've won. I mean, obviously, David is the protagonist, and we do feel sorry for him. But then, he does do some kind of unpredictable, slightly off-putting things. So, he's not like the good guy, but you do root for them. So Margaret gave the film 2 stars, and Margaret says, I like some of the topics that appear throughout the movie: the fear of loneliness, wanting to fit in, wanting to be a part of society, trying to find people similar to you. I was a bit annoyed by the fact that everyone was really dull, especially the conversations that felt like short versions of the English classics that you'd read at English class, detached and heartless. And yeah, I think it's difficult. Like, people, it can really be a bit Marmite. It can definitely be one way or the other. Like, the acting style, you either love it or you hate it. But I think it just worked for the world that it was set in. But here's the interesting part: Margaret did write a lot of things about backstory, like a lot of questions about the backstory. And in the interview that Lanthimos did, he said that The Lobster depicts a world of uncertainty. It is pointless to think too much about this world because it doesn't exist. And I'm going to be honest, I think world building is important, especially in this society that he's built, this like totalitarian state. And I think there's so much to dive into, but I think because in his head it it doesn't matter. Like, you shouldn't get worked up on it because it doesn't matter. But it does, because it's the film. We're all trying to sit and watch the film, and I get like plot is definitely more interesting, but then so is the world. We want to know, like, you don't watch Harry Potter and just think, I'll get to the plot. I don't. I just did my own title. I just added it in the podcast. But I just think it is important to talk about. It's good to want more, but it's not good to want everything answered. I feel like you have to give the audience some satisfaction to some aspects of it, if that makes sense. But that was the one thing I didn't really agree with, to be honest. I thought you have an opportunity to build on a world that is actually not that crazy different to us right now. And I think that's always an interesting thing to think about, is where on the timeline from us right now to the crazy future that people have built in films, where in the dystopian timeline are we? Are we really close to turning into that dystopian world, or are we miles from it? And I think at this rate, because obviously it's kind of a depiction of dating apps and things like that, I think we're quite close. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, we're all suffering from like dating app fatigue. We're all kind of getting a bit sick of it, and I think this film does kind of really, it shows a world where we're all just had enough. But then society are really trying to force it on you. So I don't think we're that far from it, to be honest. I think this is probably where Love Island's going to be in like 30 years, maybe 20. We'll see. But the last review I have is from Stephanie. Stephanie also gave it 2 stars, and they said, I love Yorgos, and I liked the concept behind this movie, but it just didn't work for me. The dystopian world was interesting, yet it felt a little too detached, and the characters' lack of emotion made it hard for me to connect with what was happening. I get that the emotional distance is intentional, but it left me feeling indifferent, and I think that is just completely valid to think that. I feel like this film has kind of not engaged as many people as it hoped. It's a shame, because I think a lot of it is there. It's a really interesting concept, and I think because he didn't want a world build, it kind of did lose a lot of that interest, because you do want to find out more about the world that they're living in. but it's something that I guess is not as important to him as a director. So I think for me, I'm gonna end this with my review, and I'm gonna pop this on Letterboxd later as well, because I thought I didn't want to post it yet because I thought, oh, I don't want to like spoil what I think of it for people. For me, I think I've decided to go with 3.5 stars. I feel like there's just a lot of potential in this film. There's a lot of really interesting moments, but it just wavered a little bit towards the end personally. But apart from that, Lanthimos as a director is incredible, does some really interesting stuff. And I think as well, since he's released more films, you can just definitely tell that he gets it a bit more, like he knows how to pull it all together now. So I feel like this was kind of like, the starting point, the point where he got a bit more of a like bigger budget with his movies, and I think it was just an opportunity to play a little bit, which I think is really fun, and I did really enjoy the film. So yeah, thank you all so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the first episode, and I will be releasing the new watch tomorrow. The next film, I will say, is very different to this film. Expect the complete opposite to what this film was. So yeah, thank you so much all for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.